It was remarkable to hear how the Prime Minister blew off the Daily Herald reporter last week at the press briefing, who asked a very interesting questions about the follow-up on Carbon Grove. The court verdict has absolutely nothing to do with the serious landslide possibilities that a French expert warned for by the means of a presentation in Parliament. Remember, the court case was how they have to give the apartments to the people, etc., etc. The French expert, Ripert, I believe his name was, clearly showed that serious landslides because of irresponsible excavation in the hills is a great possibility by Carbon Grove. That's the question the reporter alluded to. The Prime Minister felt offended, as she was also blamed in social media for not doing anything and allowing this to happen. Look, bottom line is this. The government is the main culprit. It's not about who did what or who signed what. In 2017, they said Emmanuel signed the permit. But signing a permit doesn't make it a crime. You know what makes it a crime? Sitting down, doing absolutely nothing when you know potential danger for human life is around the corner. And that, Madam Prime Minister, is your government for the past 4 years. So don't shake it off as if it is something different and that the reporter, when she said the NA, was doing as if it was a personal attack. It's not a personal attack, it's a factual attack. Your Minister of Romy has done nothing. You have done nothing. So please, just go and explain to people why you didn't do nothing. Or the Dubai apartments part of that deal. That the Dutch puppet doesn't even know that all local shares in the one bank we called local, the Winter Island Bank, was sold to the MCB is sad. That he has to check with the CB, so with the central bank, to see if a new local bank is being established means government ain't facilitating anything for its own people. As the person responsible for the central bank, these are things you want to hope that are being checked and pushed by the Ministry of Finance. For God's sakes, the coalition party MP Rolando Bryson has said he wants to bring a local bank to St. Martin on the floor of Parliament in meetings with the central bank that were public. I heard it too, I saw it too. So it's a pity. But maybe, since the minister don't know about all that, he can give us a better insight on budget 2023, the amended version. When is that coming to Parliament? Because right now, that's what we're waiting on, so that the police officers of St. Martin can get their money. And like the Minister of Justice said, she don't trust this at all. So she wants to see the budget pass first before she gives any comments, because she don't trust Parliament and the amended budget 2023 being passed. So 13 years and waiting, and only God knows what's next. The whole curtain removal story. This is something that started last year, picked up this year in electoral reform by the Prime Minister, and up until today, not a peep of what's happening. Postulation Day is the 22nd of November. No laws regarding the elections can change after that. At least, let's clarify that one. You can't change anything after the 22nd of November. Seeing this law hasn't even been approved, I don't see this happening. But again, maybe this was the whole game plan from the beginning. Because if the curtains come down, a lot of people that had intentions of being elected might not be elected anymore. And talking about integrity in the elections is back up in the smoke, because no one can say there wasn't ample time to do this. This was requested over a year ago. But then again, it is these type of things that plague this government all the time and the country all the time.
SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXV, yeah. Your social health insurances.
During the hurricane season, a potential tropical cyclone can produce rainfall that can cause flash flooding and rockfalls. Stay away from flood-prone areas during heavy rainfall, such as Jump Up Casino on Emil Plain Road in Phillipsburg, ATLH Road Roundabout, L.B. Scott Road from Emilio Wilson Park until Cake House Supermarket, Zaker's Gut from Petro Plus gas station until the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Welkalaken Road K Hill from Welkalaken Road Roundabout until the One-Tete Loke Roundabout, Beacon Hill Road from Sunset Bar and Grill until the beginning of White Sands Road, and Rhine Road, also known as Mullet Bay Road, after Sonesto Maho Beach Hotel to the entrance of Cooper Coy from the intersection of the University Drive until the intersection of Rio Grande. For more information on how you can keep yourself and your family safe this hurricane season, visit stmartingolf.org/hurricane. This public service announcement is brought to you by the government of St. Martin.
I guess my follow-up question is, well, it's a two-part now. We've talked about the voter, but what about the individual who is not a part of a particular political party? How is the electoral process inclusive to those persons from those perhaps marginalized communities that do not identify with a political party but still seek to participate in the election process?
And this is, going back to the question, this is also assuming that these individuals are able to be elected, right?
Yes,
that they
correct.
meet all the criteria for election.
Correct. Of the right age, of the right nationality.
Okay.
But are not a part of the machinery.
Right. I mean, in that sense, part of what we spoke about tonight too was this idea of proportional representation, right? And that this system allows small parties a voice and it makes every vote count. So I would say people who feel that they do not align with any of the parties, you have until October 11th. And, to go out there and register. And, so you don't need to have a full slate of 21 people. We've seen that in the past elections, that even, smaller parties with less candidates were able to secure seats. So I think everybody, and that's the thing here, we need to realize, I think, how much every vote counts and how easily one individual can influence the election.
What happened during that debate, at one point, the Council of Santo Domingo told the people who were debating in Spanish, as again, every party had a Spanish-speaking person because some of the parties think then we can get a lot of votes. And then the council said, if all of you together form one party, you could have at least 2 seats in the Parliament of St. Martin. And it was a little frightening thought for me because I'm saying, could I have done that if I was in San Domingo? Although my father's from there. But it was a bit frightening because even now we hear a lot of people being very disgruntled about the President of Parliament because some of our people saying, yeah, but he ain't a real St. Martin. So we're having some all kinds of other issues that will be playing a role. But again, that council had said, if all of you, all 6 of you, would form a party and just go after the votes of the Santo Domingo people who are entitled to vote, you have 2 seats in your parliament.
I fundamentally agree with Mr. Romney's position. I think it is unconstitutional to have independent members of parliament. I can't see it. I don't know where it is in the legislation. So I think my issue now becomes, what do we do to address the issue? As in most things, as Ms. Richardson has indicated, we have the law, but we have no enforcement. So people are permitted to continue, or bad behavior is permitted to continue. And we can argue about the mandate 44, but the reality of it is, whether you agree with your party's position, you can always still, this is the only point I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Romney on, you still vote with your conscience. You don't have to declare yourself an independent candidate to do that. So that's, in that regard, that's one. And I think there was another point with regards to the devolution of powers. It said devolve government, but I think it was clearly, I think the question should have been, or should we have a clear voting, or should we vote for our executive, should we vote for our legislature, and should we have the judiciary? A clear separation of powers as a devolved system of government. I think that alleviates a lot of the issues as it relates to ship jumping, because you vote for your legislators, and you vote for your executive branch. You know who you're getting, you're voting for your prime minister or the team. And I think our perspective is somewhat limited as well. Where do we want to see St. Martin? Democracy has to reflect not only the St. Martin now, but the St. Martin we would love to envision. What does that look like? Is that a republic? Is that, there's so many different concepts on what St. Martin could look like. And if we only think about it in the here and now, we limit how we reform our systems. And that's my 2 cents.
You know, I love the discussion. I actually like to hear these kind of discussions because it kind of fits into what we all need to be talking about. We are talking about ship jumping, we're talking about stability of government, but there is one thing that I fail to hear today, and that is the actual cause of the instability of the reason why government drops. If somebody ship jumps, they say that I don't align with my party anymore. Nothing happens with the composition of parliament. I am a sitting MP, and regardless of all the calls I've had these last 4 years to drop government, to take a minister, if I want to pick a minister of whatever ministry, that is happening. But guess what? You cannot legislate human character. So it is up to me, one of the people who the people chose, to say no, to stand firm in my shoes and say, regardless of everything that you offer me, whether it's positions, money, or people, I am going to say no because I do not believe in corruption. That is a personal choice of me as one of the 15. And I think that the emphasis on that is being put in the back seat, and we are looking at a sort of a system that seems to be wonky, while we are the ones who is making it that way. If somebody ship jumps, for example, nothing happens with those people who are in parliament. But you know what happens if somebody invokes Article 59? If the prime minister then decides, you know what, based on this difference of composition or whatever happens in parliament, because like Article 44 says of the Constitution, de staten vertegenwoordigen het gehele volk. That's it. It doesn't speak of one member of parliament. It doesn't speak on 15. It doesn't speak on political parties. It speaks on the body of parliament representing people. That means I have to represent everybody in this room, and MP Gums has to represent everybody in this room. That is the principle of what our Constitution has for us as parliament. So if the composition of who is in what faction and whatnot changes, it is also up to us to legislate, okay, you know what? What if we decided that when we elect 15 MPs, instead of we have factions with staff, everybody gets one staff member with a very low salary? What then? Does it matter who is an independent faction and whatnot? Because it doesn't have any implications on the budget. So we are acting as if these implications that are around the body of parliament is what's causing it. The problem is very simple. If somebody in parliament decides, you know what, for whatever reason, I cannot align with you guys, and then for whatever reason, and then I'm going into what MP Marlin was talking about, I find that I should be part of a new coalition or formation whatever in government, which they have offered many times, that is perfectly possible. But you know what the law does not say? That when that happens, when the composition of 8 goes to 9 or 10 or 11, that the prime minister in their turn then has to drop government. It is perfectly normal that the composition of who is in coalition and who is in opposition changes in a 4-year term. We don't need to be sent to elections and go through all these financial burdens just because the prime minister then said, you know what, if y'all are going to change who is going to command me, then I'm just going to send you home. Because that's where the tit for tat comes into play. That's where the problem comes into play. That's where we now are going to place the blame on the ship jumpers while they haven't invoked Article 59. If we decide to join the coalition, no, it is still up to the prime minister to invoke Article 59 or not. She can say, well, you know what, I respect Parliament, if this is their choice, and I will respectfully step down, let them choose a new composition of council and ministers to go through that term for us to make it to the 4 years. That is up to us as people with our characters.
Members of Parliament at the beginning of the government period all they do is state, I am supporting the government program for this term, or I'm not. Or along the way, they change their mind and say, I no longer supporting the government and its program, and they become independent. It happens here, it happens in Aruba, it happens in Curacao, it happens in Holland. So it's a standard thing. It's not an exceptional thing. And again, when you talk about free mandate and your conscience, parliamentarian is bound by an oath to vote their conscience.
The idea of having these sessions was something that we wanted to start more than a year ago, so it wasn't like right in the heat of elections. Several things came in the way, and I was even asked, why bother doing that so close to elections still? And for me, educating the population is the reason. At the end of the day, there are changes that can or cannot be made, and from what I've heard from all our panelists, is that most of the changes need to happen at the core of the election process, which is within the party system, to really create the party that is gelled. And I think we have an opportunity to do so because all of the last elections were done as snap elections. And so there was no time. There was a 3-month space or something like that. Help me, Natalie? Yes. From the time, government quote unquote falls. So you end up with just that small space of time. And so everyone knows since whenever that election will be in January, you have the opportunity to prepare, even though some, were calling for it earlier. At the end of the day, we have, together with the main voting bureau, come out on the dates that would give this parliament the 4-year time to sit.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah. Your social health insurances.
It's hurricane season. Are you prepared? Here are a few tips to keep in mind to help keep you and your family safe. The Atlantic hurricane season runs from June 1st to November 30th, with the peak occurring between mid-August and late October. This hurricane season, be sure to put together a go bag. A disaster supply kit including a flashlight, batteries, cash, first aid and supplies, medications, and copies of your critical information if you need to evacuate. This public service announcement was brought to you by the government of St. Martin.
In 2 different cities, 2 lawyers who once represented Donald Trump have now turned on him in court. In New York City, it's Michael Cohen, the former fixer, who once said he'd take a bullet for Donald Trump. Today, he's the star witness against his old boss in the civil fraud trial that threatens to upend Trump's real estate empire.
This is not about Donald Trump versus Michael Cohen or Michael Cohen versus Donald Trump. This is about accountability, plain and simple, and we leave it up to Judge Engoron in order to make all the determinations on that.
Lisa, I know you just came out from inside that courthouse. Tell us what it was like in there. What did you hear? What did you see?
Well, Chris, we're about 45 minutes into Michael Cohen's testimony. Earlier today, we heard more from Bill Kelly, who was the general counsel of Mazars. And there definitely were some fireworks in his testimony. But the most important thing we heard today literally happened right before the break. That's when Michael Cohen on the stand, I'm going to read to you because I tried to take it down verbatim. I was asked by Mr. Trump to increase the total assets based on a number that he arbitrarily elected. And my responsibility, along with Alan Weisselberg predominantly, was to reverse engineer those asset classes, increase those assets in order to achieve the number that Mr. Trump asked us to. That's Michael Cohen on the stand essentially saying Trump had a number in mind for his total net worth, and it was his job, along with Alan Weisselberg, then to work backward from there to create a statement of financial condition that could support that total overall number that Trump had in his head and derived from God knows where. That's when we broke for lunch, and when we come back, Cohen will return to the stand to talk about those statements of financial condition and his role within them, a role that Alan Weisselberg denied that Cohen had.
Anything between Cohen and Trump in that courtroom?
You know, Chris, I am sitting in the courtroom in a way where I can only see Trump's head. I can tell you that so far he's maintained decorum. He doesn't seem to be demonstrably or visibly agitated by Cohen, but the reverse is also true. Cohen is testifying as if Trump is not there. He's speaking slowly, methodically, as if he knows that his audience isn't just Judge Arthur Engoron, who is the ultimate decision maker here, but people like me and the rest of the media assembled to see what he has to say. He's being plain spoken, loud, clear, and slow, and he is focused on delivering that testimony without regard to who's sitting on the other side of the room from him.
The church is being told it has a role to play in education reform in Barbados. The BUT president says it can do so by joining with other local entities to help instill positive values and promoting rational thinking among students. Mr. Lovell told the congregation some of the issues affecting students in the education system will have to be dealt with during the reform process.
We also believe that education reform should be informed by action research done by teachers in our classroom. There should be a greater focus on numeracy and literacy in primary schools. As stated by George W. Bush, and I quote, "Too many of our children cannot read. Reading is the building block, and it must be the foundation for education reform," end quote. The foundation of the education system needs to be strengthened, and this should be done in the primary school system. There needs to be more specialist teachers in primary schools, in addition to remedial teachers.
Mr. Lovell also believes continuous assessment and curricular reform must be part of the reform process.
We need to create new curricula to replace those that have been in draft since the year 2000. While the educational interests of students should be considered, the national development goals must also be considered. Additionally, there needs to be a continuation of educational policies. For example, for the Barbados Secondary Schools entrance examination, some children are afforded readers, but on entry to secondary school, these students are not always given the individual help they need, as if the problem they were faced with have disappeared. The problems have disappeared.
A professional development workshop, a ceremony to recognize past and present teachers, as well as a cricket match, will help make up the activities of Teachers Week 2023. Trevor Thorpe, CBC News.